Hello, and welcome to this episode of Range Woodworking, where today we'll be unloading the first of many sheets of plywood to make a Hamptons style indoor dog kennel. Let's get started. Okay, so while I break down the sheets of plywood, you might be asking yourself, but why? Basically, as is often the story, a client reached out for me to make this because she crates her dogs, but hates the ugly black cage like you see on your screen right now that seems to be the standard for crating at home. Now, crating your dog has some pretty widely accepted benefits. Broadly speaking, it's like giving them a bedroom, somewhere for them to escape to when things are getting to be a bit much. They're great for rescue dogs, whilst they adapt to new environments. They're great for helping pets to travel safely, and they're essential for housebreaking puppies as dogs don't want to soil their living space, so they hold on to all of their movements. If you're interested in seeing the full benefits of crating your dog, I'll link a page from the American Kennel Club in the description that you can have a read of. But these benefits don't mean you have to put up with the aforementioned ugly cage. Now, once I've made approximately 7,000 cuts with the track saw, I start with parts of the actual construction. This large piece of 18mm ply forms the base of the kennel, and I'll use my track saw track as a long straight edge to find the center of the board, and then use my track square on my track to cut a dado in the center of the board for a divider. Now, I use a number of different types of joinery in this project, mostly to practice with the different options I have, and not become too reliant on any one. I use my pocket hole jig and Tight Bond 1 to build the general carcass frames, and I was happy to use pocket holes in this because I'll be adding a decorative panel later that will hide pretty much all the screws and their associated pockets. And whilst the drill and driver are getting some action doing the pocket holes, I chuck up a countersink bit and further secure that dividing panel I cut the dado for before. Now, with fairly considerable effort, I move the base carcass outside and clamp the side pieces for the drawer together, and then measure the remaining space for the drawer carcass width. And whilst in the business of clamping things all together, I clamp these pieces together and cut them to length at the drop saw. I head on back outside to offer them up, and then allow myself a smug little grin when they're the right length. Some more pocket holes, glue and screws, and the drawer carcasses are done. I'll wrestle it all back inside, get some glue on the underside of these drawer carcasses, and then I follow it up with some screws from the underside to reinforce it. Now, as I said before, I'll be hiding the pocket holes and screws with this decorative VJ MDF panel that I'll glue on with some construction adhesive. And then I'll tip the carcass up. Oh, watch out for the light. Okay, wiggle it on back and have another go. Nope, still in the way. Okay, we're good. So I do this because the weight of the unit and the pin nails will help hold the panel in place whilst that glue dries. The next day it's time to build the face frame. I use this offcut of MDF as a story stick for some reason. I don't know why I didn't just measure it. But I use it as a story stick for these upright pieces and head out to the drop saw to cut them to length. For this build, the face frame is going to be constructed from clear hoop pine. It's a nice pale colour, it has minimal grain, and takes paint really well. I just pin these in place whilst I measure and cut the remaining lateral pieces of the frame. I creep up on this cut a little bit at a time, and when I need to take just a little fraction off, I bring the blade of my saw down, push the piece into it until it flexes just a little bit, and then cut those final molecules off to perfection. Oof, that is a nice fit. If you like that tip and want other helpful little tidbits, don't forget to subscribe below. It's truly deeply appreciated and it really helps support this channel. Right, it's time to lay out the face frame and plan for all the dominoes I'm going to use to align it and strengthen the butt joints. On the domino joiner, I use the flappy bits to reference against. I don't know what they're actually called, so flappy bits will have to do. I reference against these on each piece rather than marking with lines. As you can see here, it gives a consistent reference point. It just results in an off-center mortise. Once dry fit together, I add another upright and offer up the vertical door pieces. I think they're stiles or rails, I can never remember. And measure for the horizontal pieces, stiles or rails, I can never remember. Maths and measuring would also work and not require about 4 hands, but we got it done eventually with some simple crosscuts on the crosscut sled. And apparently I could have made the doors whatever size I want because that piece isn't fixed in yet. Brilliant work, Dan. Here I'm marking for all of the equally spaced bars. I then whip out the drill press, apply a depth stop and insert a brad point bit to drill holes that will capture the bars. And then, unavoidably, it's time for the first of many sanding sessions. Face frame, this time.
One eternity later.
When that's all done, it's time to glue up. As I'm working my way around here, I have to remember to include the steel bars that will be in the face frame. I nearly forgot, and it was nearly a disaster. The face frame's quite an odd shape and requires a heap of clamps. Well, all of the clamps.
The clamps! Or a clamp-like device.
And that should be about all the clamps or clamp-like devices we need here. I'll glue the face frame in place, and naturally I have to climb inside to help support the glue with a couple of inconspicuous pocket hole screws. Now for something a bit different, I wheel the unit outside and hit it with a coat of primer and sealer using my airless spray gun. Once it's primed, it gets a couple of coats of a vibrant white in an enamel paint. Here you can see the supports or feet that I've attached to the underside. Apparently I forgot to record this, but they're just 18mm plywood squares with a slight chamfer on the bottom edge. Now, moving on to the drawers. I cover how I make drawers in great depth in my white oak sideboard video. I'll link to that in the description below, but these are the basics. First I install the rails using a block to keep the slides level. I cut the side pieces of the drawer boxes and put them in place to measure for the front and back faces. Once they're cut, I add a small groove to retain the base and quickly rabbet the ends to reinforce the boxes, and then glue and pin nail them all together. Once the glue has dried and I've primed them, I measure the inside of the groove I cut for the bases. I'll then head on over to the table saw to cut out the plywood bases. Once cut, I'll throw the scraps in the bin and oh.
Hello darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Oh okay, we're gonna try again. I give up. When that ordeal is over, I put the drawer boxes in place with some scrap 4mm ply offcuts underneath, and then extend the drawer out one screw hole at a time until the drawers are fully secured. Once the drawers are pretty much done, we're onto the door hardware segment of the video. I use my plastic spacers to set out the reveal around the door and then clamp the door to the face frame, holding it in place. I then spend a great deal of time filming the back of my hands apparently, and not really offering you any help at all. We'll try again, and nope, good job Dan, more hand footage. Anywho, I set out the hinges with my combination square and then clamp them in place. I'll then drill each hole and follow it up with a screw, nothing unusual here, except for this Vicks bit in the drill. These drill bits are super helpful. They're designed for hinges and they find the center of the hole every time so your screws don't end up all misaligned. Back inside again, and it's time to install the bolts for the doors, and the furry foreman makes a brief entrance to inspect my work before moving on to better things. So I keep the bolts square and level by clamping my square to the frame again. And then with the lower bolts, the foreman didn't like my posture whilst installing them, but they got done. Time to make a panel for the top. Nothing groundbreaking or remarkable here. I just use my usual method of dressing the timber so that all the boards are the same thickness. I then lay them out on the workbench and draw a nice tidy triangle to keep them all in order. Using my track saw, I give each board a straight edge and then rip to width on the table saw. Apparently I couldn't be bothered putting my safety glasses on, so I use my squint because I'm an idiot. Add dominoes for alignment, squeeze plenty of Titebond 1 into the joins, build a small timber wall and try not to hit it together on the glued bits. Once all glued up, it's time to give it a quick sand through the grits. Marking with a pencil and blowing dust off between grits, and then I'll cut it to size. My chosen method here is to use my track saw to rip the long edge to its final width with my best Inspector Gadget arms.
Go, Gadget arm!
And then once that's had its haircut, I'll use my largest square to cross-cut the one end, and then I'll head to the other end. I measure this, and fortunately I check against that square, because it suggested I was out. So I try a different method. I measured the diagonal to the length on one side, and then head round the other side and use the same diagonal measurement, and then cut. Using this method helps keep the panel as square as possible. It prevents compounding any out of square errors which occur when going around the sides sequentially. And that's enough big words for me, so I'll throw a quick round over on top, and it's time to look at how to fix it to the kennel itself. On the back edge, I use this drill guide to drill a hole as upright as possible, and that will give the panel a fixed edge to work off. And then to account for wood movement across the grain, I cut domino slots in the front edge, allowing for any expansion and contraction. After marking the panel through the holes I drilled, I'll use the drill guide again to drill holes in the underside of the panel at the various fixing points. I'll then carefully tap these holes And to give it a bit of extra strength, I install these thread repair coils as inserts, just to support the cut threads. As you can see, these coils are more than strong enough to hold the weight. Afterwards, I just go around and pop off the little bits on the bottom of the coils that we used to install them. I'll take the panel back inside and offer it up. It all looks good, so I head back to the workshop under the foreman's begrudging eye, grab the fasteners and temporarily fix it in place. Now it's time to start on the back panel. First I measure the inside dimensions of each side, and then go cut another VJ panel with the track saw, but this time I'll turn them horizontally to give a sort of shiplap effect. And once that's in place, with a click of my fingers and apparently some dodgy TikTok movie magic, the second side is on too. Now I'll scribe a line on a piece of plywood and then introduce it to my little friend, the track saw.
Say hello to my little friend!
This results in a perfect press fit. Some more construction adhesive and pin nails permanently bonds the VJ panels to the backing, and then I'll head back into the garage to drill some holes to mount it. I add a lick of paint off camera and then bring the panel back inside to install it using said mounting holes. Alright, we're nearing the end now. I quickly chase my table saw around the shop cutting the drawer faces before I remember to put the brakes on. Some more paint off camera and I'll measure mark and drill for the drawer pulls and then offer the faces up. Here I use a pack of playing cards to ensure a perfect reveal all round. I pack one side and each end of the top edge with cards, and once I can't fit any more, I take the piles out one at a time, split it in half to create a perfectly even reveal all around the drawer face. I then screw the face to the drawer using the holes I drilled before, and this holds it in place whilst I drill and screw from behind for a more permanent fix. I then take the screws out of the faces, drill the holes all the way through, and install the drawer pulls. Don't worry, I'll spare you having to watch me do the second drawer. As always, gotta check that soft close action. Now this part of the build definitely had me the most nervous. The customer wanted a dark coloured timber top, and the more eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed the Tasmanian Oak isn't very dark. So I'm using Woodworking's Evolution Timber Stain in Sable Black. These are basically a tinted hardwax oil, so I use my usual method. I spread the stain around with an old credit card, and then massage it in at super speed with a white Scotch-Brite pad for about 10 minutes. Then I'll wipe away the excess with a paper towel and then a microfiber cloth. On top of the stain, I repeat with 2 coats of the plain Woodworking's hardwax oil in a satin finish. For the final time, I can bring the top in and install it with bolts and an Allen key. I'll reinstall the drawers, and once they're back in, we can see them soft close for a final time, and I'd say we're all finished. With this Academy Award winning acting, you can see it works well as a piece of furniture, not just a kennel. And it was made for dogs smaller than Cherry, but with a quick bribe, she'll go in. However, it is only briefly, and she doesn't look particularly impressed. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time, take it easy.